Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Meezan lecture series. In our recent sessions, we have been discussing Ustaz Ghamidi's understanding of Islam, and this is based on his own treatise, which is of course called Meezan and translated into English as Islam, a Comprehensive Introduction. The chapter that we were studying currently relates to beliefs. So we've already finished the chapter or a subsection on belief in God, and in our recent series, weeks, we have been studying belief in the prophets. And as far as belief in the prophets is concerned, this is actually explained by him under 11 subheadings or subcategories. So we have discussed the first three categories. So the first one was that as far as the prophets are concerned, we have to understand what is the essence of prophethood. Then we had also studied the need for a prophet, that what exactly is the need for which God sends his prophets, and how do they guide us. The third point that we have discussed relates to how do we identify a prophet, or what are the proofs that a certain person who claims himself to be an envoy of God can be objectively regarded as a prophet. So these were the 3 points that we have already discussed under belief in the prophets of God. Today we'll be discussing the fourth point and some other points as well. So this fourth point actually relates to the fact that prophets are human beings, and as human beings, of course, they have certain traits which are similar to the traits which every human being has. So they come in this world, they eat, they drink, they sleep, they walk about and marry and die just as human beings do. And of course, there is no question of them living eternally. The Quran has clarified in a number of instances that there is no difference between them and other human beings as far as their genre is concerned. And the Quran has cited the demand of the addressees of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that if he is a prophet of God, he should make for them houses of gold, generate for them canals and rivers, and make the seasons of spring descend in their deserts, plant for them orchards of grapes and dates, release on them pieces of the heavens, and bring down the angels face to face with them, and God himself as well, and then go to the heavens and bring back a written document for them. So all these demands have been cited by the Quran. So none of these demands was impossible for God to fulfill. Of course, this is something that could have been easily done. But the Almighty directed Prophet Muhammad to clearly tell his addressees that he was a human being and not a superhuman, that such demands which are made from him, he can fulfill. So, regarding all such demands, the response that he said is that I am just a human being and this is not in my capacity. To this explicitly, I can cite this verse of the Quran which Ustaz Ghamidi has cited of Surah Bani Israel. In fact, these are three verses, verses 93 to 95. The words are, قُلْ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّي هَلْ كُنْتُ إِلَّا بَشَرًا رَسُولًا وَمَا مَنَعَ النَّاسَ أَن يُؤْمِنُوا إِذْ جَاءَهُمُ الْهُدَى إِلَّا أَنْ قَالُوا أَبْعَثَ اللَّهُ بَشَرًا رَسُولًا قُلْ لَوْ كَانَ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَلَائِكَةٌ يَمْشُونَ مُطْمَئِنِّينَ لَنَزَّلْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَلَكًا رَسُولًا. Say, glory be to my God. Am I not but a messenger who is a human being? And nothing prevents men from professing faith when guidance is revealed to them but the excuse, can it be that God has sent a human being as a messenger? Tell them, had the angels been walking about comfortably in the earth, we would have sent down to them an angel from the heavens as a messenger. So clearly what the Quran has said, that since prophets have to be sent in the same species, or they should belong to the same species to which they are going to preach, so all prophets have been human beings. But this does not mean that as far as their knowledge and personality, character, spirituality and qualities of head and heart are concerned, they are similar to common people. So that is not the case. In fact, a study of their lives and times show that they are the cream of their nation. They have exemplary qualities and epitomize human attributes. The Quran has told us that if their Lord pleases, he blesses them with special knowledge and power of judgment for this purpose. So about various prophets of God, the Almighty has cited various characteristics. Just for example, regarding Prophet John, who is called Yahya in the Quran, the words are, I'm just going to read the translation, O John, hold steadfast to the book of God, and in his childhood we granted him the ability to make judgments and bestow on him kindliness and purity, and he was a pious person and one who honored the rights of his parents. He was neither arrogant nor rebellious. So again, something very, very compelling about Prophet Yahya has been cited, that he was wakana taqiyya, the fact that he was a pure human being, he had a lot of kindness in him, he was a pious person. So these were qualities that were bestowed upon the Prophet John, of course, was called Yahya by the Quran. And then regarding Prophet Moses, the words are, and when he had reached maturity and grown to manhood, we bestowed on him knowledge and the ability to make judgments. This was a reward of his qualities. Thus do we reward the righteous. Again, we can see that Prophet Moses had been given this very special ability to judge people and to pass judgment at a very early age. So the words are, Atayna hukman wa ilma. So not only this, the prophets of God are also blessed with the light of innate guidance. So you see, the light which every person has been blessed with in its most ultimate form is the guidance that you have by birth. So prophets of God always keep its flame fully alight. So they dazzle, their flame dazzles, and they shield it from the storms that arise within a person's inner self. Remember that these storms that relate to desires and carnal needs, they tend to extinguish this light. So before they are blessed with divine revelation from God, the hearts of the prophets of God and their minds are so pure and they're so noble that the truth is already evident to them to a great extent. The Quran calls this state of their inner enlightenment, this inner spirituality, as bayyana. So you might have heard of this word bayyana being used for prophets of God. And it is also evident from various incidents from the lives of the prophets that they present divine revelation as an evidence from this inner enlightenment and the vision they possess. So this is how they actually expose themselves and express themselves, inni ala bayyinatin min rabbi, that I am from a clear evidence from God. So if you look at Prophet Noah, for example, the Quran has similarly said, he said, O people, tell me if I am not on a clear evidence from my Lord, and he has bestowed upon me a blessing of his own, and you have not been able to see it, can we forcibly stick it on you while you are fed up with it? So Noah clearly has this thing in mind, that how can people not understand this? Similarly, about Prophet Saleh, the words that the Quran has used are, he said, O my people, have you ever thought that if I am on a clear evidence from my Lord, and then he also bestowed on me his grace, then who would protect me from God if I disobeyed him? So this word, of course, has been used again, inna kuntu ala bayyinatin min rabbi. So the word bayyina, as you can see, is referring to that inner enlightenment which every prophet of God has. Similarly, the Quran says about Prophet Shuaib, he said, O my people, tell me if I am on a clear evidence from my Lord, and then he has also bestowed on me the gracious gift of wahi, then what should I call you to accept this? And I do not wish to oppose you, and thus do what I forbid you. So once again, it is something that has been said in very unequivocal terms, that these prophets of God, they are human beings as far as their species is concerned, but they are extraordinary human beings. They have qualities of head and heart, they are matchless, they have impeccable character, and they thus shine amongst their humans, and they are the epitome of kindness and nobility. The fifth point which Ustaz Ghamidi has discussed regarding belief in prophets is about the nature of a prophet. What exactly is his nature? So a prophet stands at the zenith of human nature. It is evident from what is mentioned about their lives in divine scriptures, the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, that both anger and mercy are found in them. Anxiety and apprehension, grief and distress also touch them, and they also experience longing and sorrow. They're fully human. They have all these emotions. They feel sad too if they commit some mistake, and they also feel remorse. And like humble servants of God, they too express repentance before Him, and at times engage in emphatic debate and discussion with Him. So they discuss things with God. They are equipped with such emotions in order to create harmony between them and their addressees, before whom they proclaim the truth to the extent that they are left with no excuse to deny it, and also in order that these addressees are influenced by them. So if, like the angels, they were devoid of such emotions, their message would not have influenced anyone. In short, They have all these human emotions and feelings fully found in them. And not only this, besides being exemplary human beings, they are the most perfect individuals among their people. And if we look at their lives, the way they have been described in the scriptures, we will find that each prophet is the most outstanding person of his nation, a guardian of its cultural traditions, and an embodiment of all its virtues. And a prophet of God is devoid of all vices of the nation that he represents. But as far as its traits and characteristics are concerned, he is such a complete embodiment of them that both he and his people are like mirrors for each other. They can see themselves in each other. For this very reason, the Quran has said that if the Almighty had made the angels as prophets and messengers, he would have made them human beings, because without this, there would have been no effective channel and means of communication between prophets and their people. So, if a prophet belonged to a different genre and his addressees belonged to a different species or genre, that communication would not have been possible the way it should have been possible. Similarly, the example that he or a prophet can become for his nation can only be possible if both of them belong to the same species. So, in Surah Anam, verse 9, the Quran says, "And if we had made a prophet an angel, we would have given him the semblance of a human, and in this manner would have put them in doubt in which they now are in." So the Quran has clearly said that the matter of prophets who come only to deliver the truth to the degree that no one among their people is able to deny it, which is, of course, in parlance is called Itmam al-Hujjah, is different to some extent. So they have slight variations as well. So one example of this is John and Jesus. By nature they seemed more akin to angels. Thus, little did their prophets benefit from them. The way they had this abstinence in them, the way they shone and they dazzled, and they had they shirked worldly pleasures. They were very close to these angels. So this is something that is evident if we study their lives, especially if we study the lives of John and Jesus in the Bible. Now we come to the sixth thing which Ustaz has penned regarding belief in prophets, and this relates to their innocence, or the fact that in matters of religion they can be regarded as innocent. So, and they have a very special character in this regard. So he says that only those people are chosen as prophets who are able to shield themselves from the lures of their inner self, as well as of Satan, and they are able to guard themselves against sin, and are the righteous and pious among their people. So in Surah Anam, after enumerating many prophets, it is said the words have been used as kullu min as-salihin, and all of them belonged to the righteous category. And so there are different words used for their to describe them, and this is something which is very common. Kullu min as-salihin, which means that all of them were amongst the righteous. So at another instance, the words are, "And remember our servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, men of might and vision. We chose them for a special mission, reminding people about the hereafter. And with us they are counted among the best and the most righteous of men. And also remember Ishmael, Elisha, and Zulkifl. We chose all of them, and all of these were the best of men." So the Quranic words are وَكُلُّ مِنَ الْأَخْيَارِ. They were the best of their category. And we have to understand that this is how the Quran has presented its own vision and its own explanation of how these prophets of God, they become eligible for being selected for the very purpose of prophethood. So as a reward for exercising care and showing piety, now the Almighty also protects them. It is clearly evident from what ensued between Prophet Joseph and the royal ladies of Egypt, in fact the wife of Aziz of Egypt, that even before being designated as a prophet, if a situation arises in which it becomes difficult for them to shield themselves, the Almighty does so with His special burhan. So the Quran has used these words, وَلَوْلَا رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّ, had he not seen the burhan, or the sign of God. So the Almighty actually protects them from falling into calumnies or into sins. And this burhan is the divine spark which is found in every human being. But according to a divine law in people who duly honor it and accept its guidance in the vicissitudes of life, in the vagaries of life, in the trials of life, this flame, it becomes stronger and brighter, and in all delicate circumstances, it glitters and dazzles and sparkles even more to light up the darkness that might come before the eyes. The result is that they are able to persevere on what is right. So this is something that they specially do. They take care of themselves. The inner kindness that they have and the inner control that they have is something that they exercise so much that when there is a chance for them to fall into sin, or they might be lured away from sin, towards sin, the Almighty specially protects them. So on one occasion, the Quran has said, this is Surah Yusuf, verse 24, and that woman had advanced to him, and Joseph too would have advanced to her, had he not seen a sign from his Lord. Again, the words are, Laula Raha Burhana Rabbi, which means that had Joseph also not seen the sign from his Lord. Remember, the wife of Aziz, officer, a royal officer in the court of the Pharaoh. Of course, she was someone who tried to lure Joseph into something that we all know. It was something that she advanced, and she actually suggested that she is available for him, and in fact, she tried to entice him. And the Quran says, Laula Ra Burhana Rabbi, which means that had not Joseph also seen a sign from his Lord, so this would mean that he would have advanced towards her. She would have reciprocated that, but he found that inner protection from God at the right moment. So the words are, thus did we do in order to keep away evil and wantonness from him. Indeed, he was from among our chosen servants. So this was like that protection which God gave Joseph at the very right instant. Also, you might remember from the Quran that the blemish of Prophet Adam, peace be upon him, should not become a source of misunderstanding for anyone. This is something which has especially been clarified by Ustaz Ghamidi. He says that the Quran has used the word isyan, which means disobedience. But the Almighty has clarified in the Quran itself that the reason for this blemish was forgetfulness, nisyan. It is apparent from this that the act of disobedience did not result because Adam had succumbed to base desires, nor did he do it willfully. It is evident from the Quran, in fact, that when Satan swore many times before him and assured him that he was his well-wisher and made him believe that he would become eternal by eating the fruit of the very tree that was forbidden to him, he was enticed by Satan's lures, and being overcome with emotions, he ended up disobeying his Lord. But he never insisted on his lapse and became very ashamed and repented before God, who graciously forgave him and blessed him with prophethood. So it should not be in any way misconceived, which is Ustaz Ghamidi's clarification, that the nature of sin in which Adam fell was totally different. It was not something that was done from the willingness of the heart. It was something that he fell into because of nisyan, which means forgetfulness. And then the verse that has been quoted in this regard is, before this we bound Adam in a directive, but he forgot, and we found him lacking in determination. And remember, when we said to the angels, prostrate yourselves before Adam, they all prostrated themselves except Satan, who refused. At this we said to Adam, he is an enemy to you and to your wife. Let him not turn you both out from the garden, and you end up deprived. Here you shall neither be afflicted with hunger nor remain naked. Neither shall thirst bother you, nor the scorching heat. But Satan enticed him, saying, Adam, shall I not lead you to the tree of immortality and an imperishable kingdom? At last both of them ate of its fruit, so that their private parts became evident to them, and they began to cover themselves with the leaves of the garden in which they lived. Thus did Adam disobey his Lord and strayed from the right path. Then his Lord chose him, accepted his repentance, and blessed him with guidance. So once again, it was that remorse and repentance that was expressed by Adam that made the Almighty choose him once again for this task. Ustaz Ghamidi says that no different was the case of Prophet Moses. He never killed anyone deliberately. I mean, this could have been cited against him that he was guilty of killing someone, but the Quran has clarified that he never did it deliberately. It was not intentional. It was a mere coincidence that he, while helping an oppressed person of his own tribe, he had to encounter the arrogant Coptic oppressor in a brawl. Moses punched him, and we know that he was a strong person from the scriptures, and unfortunately the strike was such that the person got killed. So the nature of this incident also must not be any cause of confusion or misunderstanding, that it was done in a way that could cast aspersions on his character, especially the fact that he killed a person. The Quran has said that this took place unintentionally. He never intended. He just wanted to stop the fight. So this is in some of the verses which I will now relate before you as cited by Ustaz Ghamidi. So it says, "And one day he entered the city at a time when none of its people noticed him, and found two men engaged in a fight. One of them was from his own people, and the other belonged to his enemies. Then the person who belonged to his people asked for Moses' help against his enemy. So Moses struck him with his fist and killed him. Seeing this, Moses said, 'This is the work of Satan. He is indeed an open enemy who leads people astray.' Then Moses prayed, 'Lord, I have wronged my soul. Forgive me.' Consequently, the Almighty forgave him. Indeed, He is the most forgiving, the ever merciful." Again, as I said earlier on, it was a pure case of unintentional defense. Of course, the defense was intentional, but the killing which took place as a result was entirely unintentional. So neither did Moses intend to kill the Coptic, nor did he imagine that such a situation would even arise. So when absolutely inadvertently the situation arose, he immediately felt guilt on his folly. And as we've just seen from these verses, that he repented before God, expressing the fact that he had wronged his soul and that he is requesting forgiveness for this. Now, since this folly was an inadvertent act, it was totally unintentional, he immediately sought repentance, and after it the Almighty forgave him, and he was divinely communicated this forgiveness also. So these incidents in the lives of Adam and Moses took place before they were called to prophethood. So this is something that has to be noted as well. Adam, of course, was not a prophet at that time when the whole incident occurred, and similarly Moses, when he killed the Coptic, was also not a prophet at that time. According to the Quran, once they are given this position, once they are commissioned to this position, prophets constantly remain under the protection and supervision of the angels. The Almighty deputes guardians over them from all sides. Every single thing that emanates from them is under scrutiny, and God keeps track whether they have accurately delivered His messages in their original form or not. After such an arrangement, obviously the smallest of blemishes on their part stands safeguarded. So this is what has been implied here, that the prophets of God, as far as they are concerned, they have this innocence about them, they are protected from God, and not the slightest blemish ever emanates from them. And this is in particular very evident from these verses that I'm just going to cite from Surah Jinn. This is the 72nd Surah. It says, "As for those whom He chooses as His prophets, they can say nothing of their own, because He guards them from behind and from the front, that He may know if they have delivered the message of their Lord. And He surrounds whatever is around them and keeps count of all their things." So this verse of Surah Jinn is especially very specific, that the Almighty protects them in the matters of delivering religion, delivering the message of God. They will never falter in that. As far as their own life is concerned, it revolves around the fact that they are faithful in their delivery of the message of God. They are absolutely in line with the importance of the fact that whatever they receive, there should not be the slightest adulteration on their part. And the Almighty also makes sure of them. So we have to understand that yes, as a human being, or as human beings, they might falter in some respect, but as far as the delivery of the religion that they are conveyed to God is concerned, the Almighty makes sure that that happens absolutely faithfully. We now come to the next point which Ustaz Ghamidi has raised, and this is regarding a prophet's diligence in worship. So, keeping in view the obligation of prophets, at times they are required to be more extensive in their worship than their own companions. So, the purpose of this is to provide them with a peace of mind, and by means of dedicated devotion to God, bless them with purity of emotions and intellect and perseverance on what they believe and what they do. So we know about Prophet Moses. The Quran has said at one instance that when it was decided that he be given the tablets of the Torah, then prior to this, in order to train and instruct and groom him to bear this heavy burden, he was made to station himself in seclusion at the Mount of Sinai for 40 days. John and Jesus, peace be upon them, to the extent of monasticism, took to intense devotion to God and did not even marry, because they wanted to spend every moment of their lives in the effort to communicate the truth to their people, whose fate was being decided to the extent that they were left with no excuse to deny the truth. For this very reason, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he would sit in itikaf every year and keep fasts from time to time, not just the fast of Ramadan, but optional fasts in other months as well. When he was directed to embark upon openly warning his people, besides the 5 obligatory prayers, another prayer was made incumbent upon him. It was mandatory upon him, and this was the prayer of Tahajjud. So the time of Tahajjud was fixed for this prayer, and he was asked to read the Quran in this prayer for less than half the night or a little more. In Surah Bani Israel, it has been said, وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ نَافِلَةً لَكَ, which means that at night time, وَمِنَ اللَّيْلِ فَتَهَجَّدْ بِهِ, pray the Tahajjud, نَافِلَةً لَكَ, this is a further obligation upon you. So this is an extra obligation that was imposed on Prophet Muhammad. Yes, for the rest of the Sahaba, the companions, it was like an optional prayer, but for the Prophet himself, it was incumbent that he pray this prayer. And in Surah Muzammil, we find the extent in which he would pray. So the words are, O you enfolded in your shawl, stand in prayer by night, but not all night, half the night, or even less, or a little more. And in this prayer of yours, recite the Quran in a slow, measured tone, because soon we shall lay on you the burden of a heavy word, the burden of open warning. Verily, this rising by night is very suitable for the mind's peace and the heart's resolve, and for the speech's correctness. Because during the daytime you will be hard pressed with this task, so pray at this time, and remember the name of your Lord in this loneliness of the night. Devote yourself entirely to Him. So again, you can see how it has been impressed upon Prophet Muhammad that he must take on this extra burden of worship, because this is something that's going to help him in encountering the nuisance that his enemies had let loose, the campaigns and connivances and the conspiracies that he was facing, and that they were meant to dishearten him, they were meant to put him down, they were meant to demoralize him. So all these onslaughts that these disbelievers launched against the Prophet, the sole weapon which the Almighty equipped him with was that he should stand in the night prayer, and as the Quran says, that it's something that would create that mind's resolve and the heart's peace in him. He would be able to encounter these onslaughts in a way that would be peaceful to him, or he would be able to counter them as well in situations that in normal circumstances an ordinary human being can get unruffled. And as the Quran has also clarified here, that in this Tahajjud prayer, he was required to read this Quran, to recite this Quran in measured tones, in very elaborately small steps, so that he could lay full reflection, he could fully reflect and deliberate on what he has read. So I will now end my session here. We have discussed some of the important characteristics of the beliefs in prophets of God. So for example, as I said earlier on, the essence of the prophet, of a prophet, the need for a prophet, and identifying a prophet with 3 aspects that we have discussed earlier on. And the 4 ones that we have discussed today, they include prophets are human beings, a prophet's nature, we have discussed how it is, and then we have discussed the innocence of prophets, this is the 4th aspect discussed today, that how the Almighty protects them. And the 4th one that we discussed, of course, was the prophet's diligence in worship, that how prophets of God, they specially attach themselves to God to counter the difficulties that they face in their mission. So now we have time for any questions that you might have on what we have just discussed.
After culmination of the institution of prophethood, the word of God and the practice of the last prophet, we have with us in the form of Quran and Sunnah. And during life of the prophet, any clarity and elaboration that was provided by the prophet himself, if there was any need from the companions or other people at that time. However, afterwards, a segment of the Muslims consider that this responsibility of clarity and elaboration after the demise of the Prophet has been entrusted to a particular set of people. They declare as Ahl Bayt and the progeny of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, who now have the divine right to provide sharah wa tafsir of the Quran and Sunnah. And as these Ahl Bayt are appointed by the God himself, therefore they are infallible in discharging this duty and providing the sharah wa tafsir of the Quran and Sunnah. How would you consider this belief and argument? And I mean, how this concept is derived from the Quran and Sunnah itself?
Well, I think this is not entirely related to today's discussion, but since you have raised this question, I think the important thing is that the word Ahlul Bayt, the way it has been discussed in the Quran, is used in an entirely different context. It is used in Surah Ahzab, and the words that have been used for them, yutahirukum tathira, which mean that apparently mean that they have been cleansed of their sin. It means that people of that category, they think that they, because of being absolutely pure, so the household of the Prophet is infallible. So primarily they derive this infallibility from the ayat tathir verse, which is a verse in Surah Ahzab. But if you look up the verse, you'll find that the context of the verse, the way it has been used there, and the whole topic of Surah Ahzab is entirely different. So the hypocrites wanted to besmear the Prophet, the personal life of the Prophet and the life of his wives with various scandals. And the special directives were given to the wives of the Prophet that they should stay put in their homes, they should not go out because these scandal mongers are there, they're going to just pounce upon them and cause all sorts of unrest and commotion. At the moment, the Almighty wants to give them respite, so He would not like to tighten the noose around the hypocrites. On the other hand, He would tighten the situation or the life of the wives of the Prophet, because the Almighty saw some spark in the hypocrites, that there might be some people still who have given some respite, some chance they might mend their ways. So the whole of Surah Ahzab is a surah in which this scandal mongering behavior of the hypocrites has been described and has been debated upon. So the word yutahirukum tathira basically does not mean that they have been cleansed from their sin. What it means, if you look in the context, and of course you can study the appropriate tafsir as well, that these hypocrites, they want to besmear the Prophet of God and his wives with all these calumnies and these scandals. And on the other hand, the will of God is that He cleansed them from such happenings, that they don't happen. And for this, the Almighty has given these special directives to the wives of the Prophet, that they should speak to these hypocrites from behind a veil. They should not speak in a way that they think that there's some lure found in them. Similarly, they should not go out unless there is a special need there for it. So all these directives were given, and in this context it was said that the smear campaign that has been started against them, that is something from which God wants to cleanse them from. Which is yutahirukum tathira, comes in this perspective. Other than this, there is no other instance in the Quran in which the Ahlul Bayt can be regarded as authorities. Yes, there is another instance also in Surah Al Imran. It is said, in Surah Nisa, in fact, it is said, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu atiyullaha wa atiyur rasul wa ulul amri minkum. So regarding the word ulul amr also, the Ahlul Bayt, or the people who follow this particular sect, they think that the ulul amr are their own scholars or their own infallible imams, and hence, of course, they think that their own obedience is a must. But if you look at the surah in context and the verse in context, the word ulul amr can in no way be regarded to have this meaning. It simply refers to the rulers of the Muslims, whoever they are. So it's just a question of analyzing these verses, and you will find that as far as the infallibility aspect is concerned, the only category of people which has been regarded as infallible in the whole of the Quran, they are the prophets of God. And that too in their capacity as prophets of God. In their human capacity, they might make some mistakes. We find those mistakes have been made, and they have been at times chided also in the Quran, but never in their prophetic capacity do they make a mistake. So that infallibility is confined to the prophets of God solely.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Would I be allowed to speak in Urdu, to ask my question in Urdu?
Yes. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah. ताकि ये ज़्यादा explainable हो. असल में जो आपका last point था related tahajjud, वो हम उसको अपने डिबेट में या अपनी नॉलेज के अंदर इसको एज अ पॉइंट ले सकते हैं कि ये जब रिवीलिंग ऑफ कुरान होता था और जो चेंजेस होती थी ऑन एवरी इत्तिकाफ पीरियड, ये उसकी रिवीजन के लिए उनके ऊपर फर्ज किया गया था ताकि वो उनके लिए भी मेमोरेबल हो जाए और बाकियों के लिए भी क्लियर हो जाए पॉइंट्स जो एवरी ईयर जो भी चेंजेस आ रही हैं. ये तहज्जुद इसलिए फर्ज की थी नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम पे.
तो ये देखें, ये उसका एक मज़ीद फ़ायदा था. उसका असल वजह ये नहीं थी. असल वजह तो कुरान ने बता दी, ये थी कि नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम को और दूसरे जो अम्बिया हैं उनके लिए उनको अपनी जो मुखालफत को फेस करने के लिए जो उनको अंदर इनर स्ट्रेंथ चाहिए, जो उनको ज़रूरत है कि वो अंदरूनी तौर पे स्ट्रांग हो जाएं, उसके लिए ये ज़रूरी थी कि उनके साथ जो अल्लाह ताला का कनेक्शन वो करें तो वो उसको ज़्यादा वसी तरीके से करें और स्ट्रांग तरीके से करें. उसका ज़ाहिर ज़िमनी फ़ायदा ये भी था कि अगर वो तहज्जुद पढ़ेंगे तो फिर उसमें कुरान मजीद की रिवीजन का इम्कान था, और फिर जब अर्ज़ अखीरा की बारी आई एतिकाफ़ में आखिरी सालों में तो उसको उससे फ़ायदा उठाया गया. तो अब यूँ कह सकते हैं उससे फ़ायदा उठा लिया गया इस चीज़ से, वरना असलन जो तहज्जुद की नमाज़ है उसका मकसद ये नहीं था. वो तो मकसद कुरान ने बता दिया ये था कि नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम पे इसलिए फ़र्ज़ की गई है कि जो रात का सो के उठना है ये कल्ब की सुकून के लिए और जहन को यकसू करने के लिए बहुत ज़रूरी है, उन मकासद के लिए जिनमें उनको डाला जा रहा था और उनको बहुत सारी मुखालफत थी जो फेस वो कर रहे थे.
I'll ask one, Dr. Saleem. So it seems then that Allah had already decided which people were going to be prophets once they're born, and so he put them on that trajectory, so that they don't falter like other people in the same regards or don't make the same mistakes.
Well, this is not entirely true. You see, they made themselves eligible for that. So it's not that the Almighty put them on track, it is that they themselves put themselves on track, and such was their nature that they were worthy of being selected for this task, I would say. So yes, of course, and as you can see that the nature that they have, every person has a pure nature when a person is born, but it is left to the person himself or herself to protect that innate guidance, to benefit from it, and to outdo other people. So prophets of God, I mean, when we say prophets of God, we say human beings before they are commissioned as prophets. These prophets, when they were human beings, they had a very special character. Not that God had bestowed that character on them, it was that out of their own effort and out of their own efforts to purify themselves, they had reached a particular level of righteousness, which made them eligible.
So, but they had to be a male to do that. Like a female could.
Oh, so that's a different thing. You see, females could have been easily chosen for this purpose. It's not because their level of excellence or spirituality was any less. No, that's not the reason. I mean, they could have been even more than their male contemporaries. The reason was the patriarchal society of the world at that time. They would not have accepted a woman as a prophet. The Arabs would not have done so. I mean, even today it's so difficult. It has become difficult after even 12 or 13 or 14 centuries that great superpowers should have a woman as their leader. Even today, I mean, yes, they are, but these are exceptions. But back in those days, it was virtually impossible for them to accept anyone in the role of a role model other than a male member. They would not have accepted. So this is like that society structure, or that patriarchal structure was there. So the Quran or the Almighty did not want to interfere in this patriarchal structure of the society, because this would have been a big interference. It would be a new I would say, generation of generating people in a different mold. And this doesn't, I mean, the Almighty normally does not interfere in this natural process of development of humanity. We can see this from the past. So that is what I understand, that he did not use, I mean, he did not commission women as prophets of God, not because they were not capable of this fact, but because of the fact that the patriarchal structure of those times would never have accepted a woman in that place.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Saleem, and welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Just a quick question. I don't know if it's topic related or not because I missed the first 10 minutes of the session. So, are angels born without the instinct for being bad? Only humans have that instinct?
No, from the Quran we know that they have, I mean, the awareness of good and evil exactly the way human beings have. The only thing is that because they remain in God's presence all the time, so the proclivity or inclination towards evil is something that seldom arises in them, and if it does, they are able to control it. So this is like if you're constantly in the presence of a, maybe an example would clarify this, that if you have a better part of your life is spent in a mosque, or you're spending your days in the mosque and it's a very pure atmosphere, then the proclivity towards doing bad or evil in you is going to reduce, or it's not going to arise in the first place. So in a similar way, it's not that the angels don't have this urge in them, they have it. The only thing is that they can either control it very much, or because they are constantly in God's presence and they are obeying His orders and getting those orders, that this proximity has made them so close to God that I mean, you don't get that temptation from your own self, because remember that temptation is when you become forgetful and you do something else. But because they are all the time carrying out the task of the Almighty, that the forgetfulness, which is the cause of going astray, it seldom arises in them. And if it does, they are able to control it very well.
Okay, so the three different kinds of forms, humans, jinns, and angels, have similar instincts.
Oh yes, absolutely. The only thing is the substance from which they are created, we know from the Quran that the jinn are created from fire, human beings are created from clay. About the angels, we are told that they are made from light or nur, and that is all the difference that they have in their composition. But as far as their awareness of good and evil is concerned, this is something which all three of them have.
So are angels formed by God, or do they also procreate like humans?
We don't have any knowledge of that. I mean, this is not, we don't find any details of this. They could be procreating and they could be producing children of their own, or they could be having, I mean, not eternal, I would say, but very long lives in which they are taking care of a lot of affairs of this universe.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Saleem.
Thank you very much. Asif, please go ahead.
As regards the concept of good and evil, as per my understanding, it's primarily God's scheme that He puts the humans into a test and trial in this world. And basically this trial and test is the reason for our being. We differentiate, we appreciate good and bad. If we say that the same, the angels as well as the jinns have got the same, concept of good and evil, then my next question is, are they faced with the same element of test and trial? Because without being in a test and trial, there is no concept of good and bad.
So as far as the jinn are concerned, the Quran explicitly says that they have been put into a trial. Because we know from the Quran that messengers of God have been sent to them. Alam ya'tikum rasulun minkum yakussuna alaykum ayat. Ya ma'shar al-jinni wal-ins. So the verse says, O assembly of men and jinn, have we not sent messengers amongst you? So this clearly shows that because messengers were sent amongst not only human beings but their jinn themselves, which clearly shows that they needed guidance, and this guidance could only have been if they are being tested the way human beings are. So about them we are absolutely clear. Regarding angels, this is not, I would not agree with this style or method of reasoning or inference that in which you think that it is the awareness of good and evil which is the cause of the test, or vice versa. So remember, there could be other reasons as well. I mean, they could have an awareness, but in spite of that awareness, they are not put into a test just because they are carrying out a certain task which the Almighty has bestowed upon them. So they are doing some work for the Almighty, and they are, doing some assignments, so to speak. But this does not preclude the fact that if they don't have good and evil, that good and evil is something that as cognizant living beings they ought to have, because this is the picture that we get from the Quran about them, although it's not explicitly stated. The only thing is that they are given a different responsibility than the jinn and human beings, about whom we explicitly know that they were put into test.
There is a further clarity required because in case of if we compare humans and jinns with other creations, other animals, so definitely that's the reason that we have got this sense of evil and good because of our being in some environment of trial and test. Definitely, if we assign this aspect of being, then why is it the case that at the time of creation of Adam, the angels objected to? Definitely, they had
That is.
got that. That awareness of good and evil, that they appreciated that it might produce some evil, and they questioned the intent of the God Almighty, that why He is going to create. And then my second question is that when they had such awareness and knowledge of and difference between good and bad, then why they do not commit the sins?
So I've just tried to answer that question earlier on. They had this concept of good and evil. They had this awareness of good and evil, as you just pointed out, that had this not been the case, they would not have objected to God's scheme regarding the creation of Adam. The thing is that they remain in the presence of the Almighty a lot of the time. So it's like remaining. I gave you this example that if you spend a major part of your time of life in the Holy Kaaba or in a mosque, there's a little chance that you're going to, base desires or your own nafs is going to lure you away. Because you see, you are in a pure atmosphere, you're all the time in the presence of God. But as soon as you come out of a mosque or maybe the Kaaba or any sacred place, you go into the world, you have your worldly duties and your tasks, you tend to forget God, and that forgetfulness makes you commit that sin. So this forgetfulness is something which the angels are never overcome with, because they are always in the presence of God, and that is something which accounts for their innocence, which means that in spite of having knowledge of evil, no evil comes out of them.
Thank you very much,
So
Dr.
that means they have the potential. So can we say they have the potential to commit sin?
Well, we can say that academically. It should not make any difference in the philosophy of religion. They have the potential to do wrong, but they do not do so, because they are, as I said, they don't forget, and they are always in God's remembrance.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Rafia Khwaja, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Shehzad. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Dr. Shehzad, I wanted to ask you, we know that God has allowed Satan to tempt us. So if we give in to temptation, God is testing us. But if he didn't allow Satan to tempt us, wouldn't it have been better for us? Then we would go on a straight path. And we are constantly being tempted and constantly resisting. So God could have done anything to Satan and stop him from tempting us.
So remember, it's not just Satan who tempts us. God says that there are two sources of temptation. One is outside ourselves, which is Satan, and another one is our own nafs, our own soul. The prompts of our own nafs, they also lure you. So, and this alluring is essential for trial and test. Unless you are put into a trial in which your desires, in which your emotions, they might get the better of you and you are not able to control them, so the test would not have been fully able to function. So it's not just the lurings of Satan, it is our own selves as well that we have to overcome. And if you ask this next question that, well, he could have done away with that as well, then of course they would have been impossible to try out human beings, because now neither they would have a temptation from Satan nor from their own selves. They would be like angels, and there would have been no test of their own free will.
But Satan could have been stopped. Okay, we have our own temptation, we are guilty, but he allowed same.
I mean, you see, we have to understand God's scheme. The harder the test, the more the reward. If He has given, if there are two areas from which we are being tested, of course, the test becomes difficult. Remember, the more difficult the test, the more the reward for that.
Okay, so that's why he allows Satan to.
That is one of the reasons. I mean, there is one reason, so that we are able to benefit and earn more reward, windfall gain, as you say in economics, that you get this windfall gain and you have this opportunity, you take a risk, and when the risk is big, the reward is big as well.
And the second is from ourselves. Of course, we are responsible for that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ruhi Rasul. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Sir, in the beginning of this lesson today, uh, we try to understand that prophets are just like ordinary human beings. They are not superhumans, and they belong to the same species to which they are sent down. But at the same time, we see that their hearts are impure. They have inner enlightenment, and they are extraordinary human beings. They are noble, and besides, they shun the worldly pleasures, like Jesus and John. Then how we can say that they are just like ordinary human beings when they have so many different traits which ordinary human beings don't have?
So you see, the point that is being made here is that their species is something which is the same as all other human beings. I mean, I cannot be regarded as an angel, I can't be regarded as a superhuman. I am a human being. But within a human being, there are several levels of being a human being. You could be an extraordinary human being, you could be an ordinary human being, you can be a below par human being. But the categories remains the same, the species remains the same. Now, to become an extraordinary human being, that is self-effort. It is not that God is going to bestow you with that. It is that you have that own inner conviction that makes you rise to that higher level within a human being. So that higher level which a human being has is something that he strives for and becomes eligible as a result to be commissioned as a prophet of God. So it is not something which is beyond that human, I would say, ambit. He still remains a human, but he becomes a better human, a very good human. All that we can say is that the best qualities which human beings have, they become amalgamated in his personality. But he still remains a human. And in other words, every human being can have the eligibility to become a prophet of God if he raises himself to a certain level. Of course, the selection would still be on God. He might select certain individuals, he might not select certain individuals. But the fact is that he will only select those who have risen to a certain level. And to rise to that level is possible for every human being, because this is an effort that we can do. And if we don't do it, of course, then we will not be at par with the selection process of the Almighty. So we have to prove eligible, and amongst the eligible people, God is going to choose some, and that choice will be based on His own wisdom. I mean, you could have argued that if everyone is of superhuman character, or let's say a very high caliber, then why is it that some are chosen and some are not? So yes, this question could be pertinent, but the answer is that in spite of becoming eligible, there's still something which God has not disclosed to us, and that is the wisdom and hikmah, that He selects certain people who make themselves worthy, and He might not select certain other people who are as worthy as their contemporaries.
Okay, sir. I have another question, if I'm allowed to ask. Sir, I haven't understood Burhan the divine law protection for the chosen people. What
Yes.
is this, sir?
So, Burhan means that if you protect yourselves from lures, from desires, then on certain delicate occasions in which there is a chance that you might succumb to those desires, God specially protects you because you have made yourself eligible for His protection, because you were protecting yourself all the time, and now there came a very delicate moment in which your test was there and you would have fallen for that. You could have fallen for that because the test was very strong. Remember, the instance that has been quoted here is that that woman had made herself available to Joseph. And the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ هَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا. وَهَمَّتْ بِهِ means that she advanced towards Joseph. And the Quran says, وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا رَأَى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّي. And Joseph would have also succumbed to this advancement, and he might have replied and come closer to the woman. But laula ra burhana rabbi, had it not been for the sign or the divine spark in him, which suddenly the Almighty helped him and said that you must not succumb, you must stay away. So it was like God's help that he became worthy of as a result of protecting himself all his life. So in summary, on precarious instances or on delicate instances in which a person might fall into sin, if he has protected himself in his previous life, then he has made himself eligible that on certain very testing and trying occasions, there could have been this chance that he could succumb, but God protects him.
So actually, the infallibility of the prophets is for the purpose that because that is something related to the security of the divine message, that it is in its true, in its ultimate form, it's available.
Right.
But after the prophet, it is well that prophets are immune from committing any, error in getting the message and then transmitting it onwards. But how about the others generations? Till the life of the prophet it's fine, but then for the onward generations, this immunity to error is not available to other humans. So in terms of transmission of the message, the concept of infallibility, what would it be?
So the transmission is also infallible. That is the natural consequence of the fact that the institution of prophet was terminated, because now the message would be protected forever, and not a person but the message would become infallible as far as the text is concerned, not the interpretation. That was precisely the reason that the message was made as infallible. The word infallible actually also refers to the interpretation of things, which I'm not referring to at the moment. So infallibility actually here means the certainty or the certitude of the fact that whatever we are being received or we receive in the form of religion is absolutely the same as what the Prophet himself received. So that infallibility in transmission is very much there still. And that is the consequence of the nature of that transmission, the way that that message was delivered from the Prophet onwards to the rest of the Ummah was such a process that rendered the message infallible itself. And again, the message is not the interpretation of the message, but the text of the message. For example, the text of the Quran, for example, the practices of the Prophet. So these are infallible in themselves as far as their generation or transmission is concerned, but not the interpretation.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Saima Khan, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. My question is that, I was listening to Professor Israr, and it's related to tahajjud prayers, as it was in the topic too. He was telling that the essence of tahajjud prayer is that, you wake up in the night, you pray, you do some prayers, then go back to sleep, and then you wake up again for the
Right.
Fajr. Is it true? What was the practice of the Prophet? Are we supposed to do it that way? Obviously, it's not possible these days because we try to wake up in the half an hour, 30 minutes before Fajr, and we make tahajjud and then we wait for the Fajr rather than going back to sleep. So can you please clarify it to me? Thank you.
So you see, what Professor Israr might be saying, and he's correct in that, is that the tahajjud prayer itself is ideally something that we have to pray when we go to sleep and then get up at night. So what he was maybe trying to negate is that if you stay awake all night and then offer tahajjud, this is not the ideal form of tahajjud, and that is right. The ideal form is not that you remain awake from Isha onwards until the time of tahajjud comes, although this happens to many young aspirants who study, maybe even elders. For them, yes, it's the second best option, that when the time of tahajjud starts, which is after midnight, you can offer the tahajjud prayer. But the right and ideal form is that you get up after sleeping. As far as remaining awake between Fajr and tahajjud, that is fine. I mean, if you get up a few minutes or maybe half an hour before the time of Fajr, you pray your tahajjud and you wait for the time of Fajr. You pray tahajjud and you wait for the time of Fajr, and then you offer Fajr, and then you maybe go off to sleep. Off to sleep after that, that is fine. So it's not a problem that if you keep awake between those two prayers. The only thing is that when you are going to get up for tahajjud, it should be after sleep. But as I said, this is the recommended form, and if this is not possible, or maybe people are still awake and the midnight time comes, the tahajjud time has begun and they have not yet slept, so yes, they can sleep. They can say the tahajjud before going to sleep, or they can say the tahajjud and still remain awake for the rest of the night.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That was it for all the questions today. Thank you for your time and welcome back.